Welcome to Spider Project tutorial. In today's session we're going to talk about cost components. We have 1 kilometer of road construction as an example project with phases, activities and dependencies set up. We also have set up some resources in the resource table and started assigning these resources to our activities. We have also set up some materials and we assigned materials to some of the activities in our project. So now it's time to talk about cost. Spider Project allows full integration of time and cost, taking into account all possible cost elements. Each project is unique and may require different cost elements. We need to be able to manage cost of our materials, labor, machinery, licensing, contract. We might need to be able to manage indirect cost, penalties, and cost of delay, and some others. All of these could be set up as cost components in Spider Project. Let's set up cost components for our project plan. For that, let's go to the main menu view, Cost Components, and this is the table where all the cost components are managed. By default, there's one cost component in this table already, but if we decide to manage project cost for the plan in Spider Project, only one cost component is not going to be enough, so we need to create more. If we double click on that cost component line item, we get into the cost component form. And this is where all of the key parameters of the cost component are set up. These parameters will be also visible as columns in the cost component table. So to create a new cost component, just press the Insert button or go right mouse click New. And to save our time, I've prepared some cost components earlier, and I'm just going to copy paste that. So each cost component has got a code and name as a minimum, and if we need to manage these cost components with more parameters, we can do that later. Let's see how cost components work in Spider Project. I've prepared a slide for that. In Spider Project, cost component can be assigned directly to the activity, and it can be fixed, volume, or time-based. Cost component could sit at the material level, material that is assigned to that activity, and material cost would be driven by volume. Cost can be assigned also to resources, machinery or human resources. And if there are any material consumption by those resources, for example, a bulldozer and fuel, then the cost would be driven by both of these components. Material would be driven based on volume, and resource cost would be driven by time. And the summary of all these cost components and elements would form the total activity cost. Now let's see how these options work in Spider Project. First of all, we need to go into the resources table. This is a list of our resources, human resources and machinery, and this is where we'd like to set up the cost for our resources. Let's bring into the view two columns. Right-click on Table Header, Show Columns, go to the Group's Cost Components area, and the columns that I'm going to choose is labor and machine cost. I need to make sure that the expenditure type is set up per hour for these two columns. Then I go Show and Close, and this is where the costs visible in the resource table. To save our time, I'm just going to paste some values into these two columns. But you can see that my labor cost elements, labor per hour, is all against the human resources, labor, machinist, worker, driver. And in the machinery cost column, this is where all the costs of my machinery. Oh, I think I've forgotten to put some cost for the project manager. I can do it here. And I think I've forgotten to mention the type. So that's important to keep it consistent. We have mentioned that in our project example, resources consume some materials. And in our example, we have machinery that requires fuel consumption. The cost of these resources is driven by the cost of machinery. The machinist cost would be normally maybe included into the machinery cost. To keep it simple, let's assume that it's the case for our example as well. So the cost of machinery is definitely driven by some fuel consumption. And we can reflect this in this resource table. Let's bring into the view another column. Go on the table header, right-click, Show Columns. And the column I'm going to bring to the view is the column from the materials. And the material that we're going to reflect in this table is fuel. We just need to make sure that the fuel expenditure type is set up for the units per hour. And I'm going to bring this column to the view. This is the area where we can set up our fuel consumption project units per hour. And I'm just copying that from the table I've prepared earlier to save our time typing. So you can see for all of my machinery resources that requires fuel consumption, I've got this units set up. And now after we've set up the material consumption and resource cost for labor and machinery, we need to make sure that the cost of our materials is also set up. Let's go to the main menu view, materials, and in this table we need to bring to the view column, go right click on the table header, show columns, go into the groups of fields cost components, and we need to bring a column to the view called materials cost. We need to make sure that the expenditure type for this column is set up for unit cost, and we'll bring the column into the view. This is the area where we can populate the cost of our materials, and I'm just going to copy paste that from the table I've prepared earlier to save our time typing, and click the Save button. So now we have our material cost set up as well. Let's go back to the activity Gantt view. So we looked at how to set up cost components and assign cost to resources and materials, and how it can work in the combination when resources are consuming materials as well. In Spider Project, you can assign cost to activity directly. Let's look at sand and crush stone transportation, which is a duration-based task delivered by a supplier. And for that activity, let's just double click on it and go into the activity form, into the cost components. Say we have a fixed cost expense for this task. Let's just add this cost component as external services. And let's imagine we've got an external service that has got a fixed cost of $1,000. And this is how you can assign the fixed cost to an activity directly. In other scenarios, you would have an hourly cost or volume-based unit cost for the task. We could do that as well. But for now, let's just apply this fixed cost example. So we have set up all the cost components for our project plan. We've also assigned costs to resources and materials in our project. And we established the connection of resources consuming materials where applicable. We've assigned costs to activity directly, and that can be done via fixed volume or time-based approach. Now we can look at how to calculate the estimated cost. Before we do that, let's bring to the view another column. Go to the table header, right-click, Show Columns, and the column I'm going to bring to the view is called Total Cost Remaining. So now let's calculate our schedule with cost and material taken into account. I'm just going to leave all the settings as default settings for that calculation. Click OK. And now we can see that the cost for our project is visible in this column as a total estimated project cost and the cost for each activity based on the resources materials assigned. Another great feature in Spider Project to complement this view is in the main view reports and diagrams, general reports and diagrams, and I'm just going to bring to the view the parameter called total cost and click OK. And this view is here as a distribution of cost on the timeline. And it's quite a powerful view that I really like using with my stakeholders. So there's much more to cost management in Spider Project, but today we've just covered some simple steps. Thank you very much for watching our video today, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.